Yesterday in worship, I mentioned the book Grandma Gatewood's Walk. It's the story of Emma Gatewood, a 67-year-old grandmother from southeastern Ohio who made the decision to hike the Appalachian Trail. And she started off in Georgia and a few months later finished the trail in Maine. She would actually go on to hike the trail 2 more times, the last time when she was 75 years old. Just an incredible woman. As you can imagine, there are plenty of stories that she had from her months spent on the trail. But one of the ones that I wanted to share with you was about the time that she ran into a group of young men from New York City. Now, at the time, East Harlem, New York, was the most densely populated area in the world. And there were gangs that were fighting each other. There was racial tension. And a local church in New York City wanted to try to do something about it, to bring people together. And so they sponsored a hiking trip for the 4 leaders of each of 2 of the rivaling gangs. And they were sending these young men and the church leaders on a hike of part of the Appalachian Trail in Vermont. Well, while they were there, a hurricane developed and was hitting the East Coast, and it blew inward, and it trapped the young men at their campsite because some of the trail washed out and the rivers and the streams were at flood stage. Well, late in the evening, here into camp walks Emma Gatewood. All of her supplies had been washed downstream and she was weak and tired. Now, the 2 groups couldn't have been more different. Emma Gatewood was a Caucasian female from rural southeastern Ohio. She spoke with a southern accent. Now, she ran into these young men who were gang members. They were from New York City, and they were African American. Now, initially, they didn't have a lot to talk about, but because of the bad weather, they were forced to camp out together and share resources. And by the end of the time, they had developed friendships. When the time came to be able to hike out of their camp to get to safety, they had to cross several streams, and Emma Gatewood was only 5'2", and so the gang members gave her piggyback rides across these streams. Well, they parted ways shortly thereafter, and the young men went back home to New York City. A few weeks later, the leader of the church receives a postcard from Maine, and it's from Emma Gatewood. And she wanted to let them know that she had made it, but she also wanted to say, to tell the boys thank you for saving her life, to make sure that they knew that they were welcome at her home any time and that she loved them all. Yesterday in worship, we used the scripture where Jesus talks about all of the sheep being drawn together under one shepherd. And I think this is a great example that someday all of the differences we have will not matter anymore, and we truly will be one flock under one shepherd.